my dad's from South America, and I remember long ago he said, because he went to formal schools, he said that he was raised with this terrible idea, he called it terrible, that if somebody was happy and they smiled a lot, that they were stupid. And I said, what is that about? And he said, well, that came, in his words, from the British school system, where the idea was that you were supposed to be skeptical of things. And that if you were happy or happy-go-lucky and you weren't drinking, that people would assume that you were an idiot because you weren't bothered by the problems in the world and you were accepting of the things that you heard and were told. In other words, you're an idiot. And my dad's a very happy person now.
Sure.
And he has talked about, having to break that mold, that like it's okay to wake up and take a walk and be happy, that it's okay to be happy. And so that's just one thing that I think I grew up thinking too, and maybe not to that extreme, that if, especially in academia, like if you're not like to be happy is to not be discerning. It's totally false, right?
Of course.
Now, we're a long way from England right now. And that's probably something more of my dad's generation than mine. But I think the idea nowadays does seem to be that if you're happy-go-lucky and you're feeling good, that you must not be thinking about all the terrible things going on in the world, or that it's insensitive to those that are suffering, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love your thoughts on this idea that we don't give ourselves permission to feel as good as we might feel because of some social pressure or assumptions that we've internalized.
Which is all learned.
Mm-hmm.
And so these are learned phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sometimes outside influence. So talk about happiness. As I was writing and I was doing the chapter on mindsets around emotion and talking about this relationship with different emotions, and we could play around with this all day long. I could say, what's your relationship to anger? What's your relationship to happiness and contentment? And all of a sudden you start realizing, wow, I have a complicated relationship with my emotions. And I was thinking about it with happiness too. And for me, what's interesting, which is different completely from your dad's, is because of my kind of tough childhood and a lot of bullying, is that I would go to school one day and I would be happy and I'd see the bullies and all of a sudden they'd say things like, what are you so happy about today, Brackett? And I didn't realize that until I was writing. And then I would get on stage and I do a lot of public speaking, and I'd be standing there like feeling really good with my speaking. And then I'd get the applause at the end and I would start kind of looking down, and I started realizing I'm uncomfortable being happy. Like I'm waiting for something to go wrong because, in my childhood, like happy meant like, we're going to bring you down. We all have these kind of developmental connections, for lack of a better term, to our different emotions. And I think that it gets back to the phenomenon. There's no good or bad emotions. Life, firstly, some of it is genetic and biological, our proclivity to experience certain emotions. The regulation piece is all learned. Like you're not born with a pocket full of evidence-based strategies to regulate. It's just like, I don't know about you growing up. My father was very different. My father was the angry guy, and he'd say, "Son, you got to toughen up." I'm like, "Dad, look at me. Come on, let's move on. It's not happening." And you know that I have a 5th-degree black belt. I became the tough guy that my father wanted me to be. But nevertheless, what does that even mean? But, growing up, when I was struggling, my parents missed a lot of the cues. Come down the stairs. I didn't have my father say, "Son, I'm noticing a shift in your emotions today. Your posture is different. Your facial expression is different. Let me give you a research-based strategy to help you regulate your anxiety, stress, pressure, fear." No, it wasn't even a construct. I mean, I don't know, but did you grow up with a concept of emotion regulation?
Definitely.
You did.
And
there
was a big gender split. In my home, I had the sort of belief based on the context that women could express their emotions big or small, and that men weren't supposed to lose their temper. Men weren't supposed to be angry.
That's interesting. It's
Yeah.
kind of counter the way people think about it nowadays, right? Like
Oh, yeah.
the men are like, the more power you have, the more anger you can express.
Oh, the complete opposite of that. In fact, and I don't think he'll mind. My dad's been on this podcast, and we have a great relationship now, and we've done work, and it's been awesome. I mean, it really has. I mean, and I remember when I was a kid, if he got angry, he would blink, and now I know that as like behavioral suppression. You know, he was like blinking, but I can't ever remember my dad having an outburst ever. So I just internalized this idea, like, okay, you don't have outbursts. But I have a certain side of my family that, my extended family that's from New Jersey.
Oh, look at you.
Where words are sometimes used as weapons.
Okay.
And anger is a bit more outward sometimes, at least in that side. And then I have a South American side where things are more, formal and boxed away. And I think I internalized a bit of both. And so I have all sorts of constructs around who's allowed to express emotions and what extremes. But no, I didn't observe a lot of anger.
Or maybe a little suppression.
Lots of suppression. Lots of suppression.
Which is regulation. It's just
Yeah.
not the adaptive kind usually.
Right. And, I probably averaged the two, in my own life. But in terms of happiness, I think the same thing now that I think about it, that it's okay for women to be fully expressive and for men to be, it's a bit more of the, it's kind of the 1950s model that was very present in my home and in my mind. Yeah.
Yeah, I can think with happiness, as with any emotion, it's about like the time and the place for happiness. Like we have research that shows that people who strive to be happy all the time actually are more miserable because it's hard to live up to that all the time. People who strive for more contentment in their life actually seem to have greater well-being. And so I just think, again, it goes back to these mindsets around emotions, that there's no good or bad emotion. Anger is fine. Obviously, if it's too intense and it's lasting too long, it's probably not going to be good. Happiness is something that we should, experience, but, if we're attached to it, it's going to be problematic because every day is not a sunny day. There are rainy days too, and you got to be comfortable with the rainy days. And the important thing also is not just our feelings about our feelings. It's also about our mindsets around our capacity to deal with those feelings. Like, do I believe I am capable of managing my anger? Do I believe I'm capable of dealing with the disappointment? And we find a distribution of scores for that too. Like going back to my dad, we have very different fathers. My father would say things like, son, this is the way I deal with my anger. You're going to have to get used to it. I would say now, like, sounds like you got a fixed mindset, Dad. Like there are other options, to deal with your anger. But he was sort of like, this is the way I am. You're going to have to deal with it. No learning interests. Whereas nowadays, I hope to help people see, wait a minute, is that emotion working for you in your relationships or not? If it's not, there are alternatives.